You drive 50 miles to your favorite lake, skip the morning alarm clock, and find the most beautiful, crystal-clear water. You cast for hours and catch absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, the old guy fishing in a creek that looks like a puddle of chocolate milk is pulling out monster after monster. Why? Today, we are going to talk about a hard truth that contradicts everything your grandfather taught you. We are going to reveal why ignoring the murky, dirty water is the absolute biggest mistake you are making on the lake. I promise you, by the end of this video, you will realize exactly why you go home empty-handed while others catch the giants. Let me ask you right now, do you avoid the mud? Tell me in the comments, because we are about to change your entire mindset. For generations, fishermen have been told that clear water is the holy grail. We are naturally drawn to places where we can see the bottom, where the weeds look perfectly green and vibrant. The old logic says that if we can see the fish can easily see our bait, making them easier to catch. We stick to this habit for years, repeating the exact same patterns, throwing the same natural-colored lures into the same pristine coves. But this old-school belief completely ignores how the most aggressive predators actually hunt and survive. It is a psychological trap that keeps millions of anglers away from the most productive spots on the water. Let us talk about the psychological trap of clear water. Every single one of us has been there. You arrive at the lake just as the sun is coming up over the trees. The air is crisp, the birds are waking up, and you look out at the water. It is crystal clear. You can see the rocks on the bottom. You can see the green weeds swaying perfectly. It looks like a fishing magazine cover. Your human brain tells you that this is exactly where the fish must be. We are naturally drawn to clean, beautiful water. We think that if we can see the fish can see our bait, and fishing will be easy. But here is the harsh truth that nobody wants to admit. Fish do not care about beautiful scenery. They do not care about your perfect view of the bottom. In fact, that perfectly clear water is often a death trap for them. When the water is that clear, every bird of prey, every larger fish, and every single fisherman can see exactly where they are. So they hide, they get incredibly spooky. They inspect every single bait with a magnifying glass. If your lure does not look 100% real, they will just swim away. You end up casting for hours, admiring the view, but your live well stays completely empty. It is time to break that old habit and stop fishing with your eyes. Focus on how aggressive predators actually operate. They are not grazers, they are assassins. Assassins do not stand in the middle of a brightly lit room. They hide in the shadows. Murky water is nature's shadow. When you look at a patch of muddy water, you might see dirty runoff. A big predator sees an invisibility cloak. It allows a massive fish to sit in less than 2 feet of water without being spotted by an osprey or a heron. More importantly, it allows them to hide from their prey. Imagine you are a big, heavy fish. You do not want to chase a nimble little baitfish across a clear, open flat. That burns way too much energy. You want to sit perfectly still in the cloudy water, waiting for some clueless little fish to swim right past your nose. Then, boom, one quick explosion and dinner is served. This is why the most violent strikes happen in the dirtiest water. The fish are not cautiously inspecting anything. They are reacting on pure instinct and aggression. If something moves near them in the mud, they kill it first and ask questions later. If you are ignoring these muddy sections because they look ugly to you, you are walking right past the most aggressive, hungry fish in the entire lake. One of the oldest fishing myths out there is the idea that fish cannot find your bait if the water is too dirty. How many times have you heard an old-timer say that the water looks like chocolate milk and the fish cannot see a thing? It sounds logical to a human being because we rely almost entirely on our eyes. If you put us in a dark, muddy room, we are completely helpless. But fish are built completely differently. They have a built-in radar system called the lateral line. It runs straight down the side of their body and is incredibly sensitive to vibration and water displacement. They do not need to see your bait to know exactly where it is, how big it is, and how fast it is moving. They can feel the thump of a spinnerbait blade or the wiggle of a crankbait from several feet away, even in absolute zero visibility. Think about catfish or big predatory bass feeding in the dead of night. There is absolutely no light, yet they hunt with deadly accuracy. The muddy water does not make them blind. It just shifts their hunting strategy from visual to sensory. Once you understand that these predators are feeling their way to their next meal, you stop worrying about water clarity and start focusing on how much noise your lure makes. Picture this exact scenario. It is a quiet morning on the water. The mist is still rolling off the surface. You have a buddy in the boat with you. He insists on moving toward the main lake point, where the water is beautifully clear. He is throwing a delicate little finesse worm, trying to be as stealthy as possible. He gets a couple of tiny taps, maybe pulls in a fish the size of his hand. Meanwhile, you point your rod toward the back of a shallow, muddy creek arm. It is full of floating debris. The water is stained dark brown from a recent rain, and it looks like a swamp. Your buddy laughs at you. He thinks there is no way anything is living in that mess. But you tie on a heavy vibrating jig with a bulky trailer. You pitch it right into the thickest, muddiest part of the cover. It barely sinks 2 feet before your fishing line jumps. You set the hook hard, and the water simply erupts. You drag a monstrous, angry predator out of the mud while your buddy stands there in absolute shock. This exact situation happens every single day on water bodies all over the world. The guy fishing the ugly, dirty water gets the trophy, while the guy fishing the pretty water gets the practice. Do not be the guy fishing for practice. You have to think about where the food chain actually starts. It does not start in sterile, crystal-clear water. It starts with microscopic life, with plankton and tiny insects. Where do you find the highest concentration of those tiny organisms? You find them in the murky water. Runoff from the rain washes nutrients, worms and bugs right into the water, creating a muddy zone full of food. And guess what happens next? The small baitfish follow the food. They swim right into the cloudy water to feast on all those tiny nutrients. They also feel safer in the dirty water because they think they are hidden. But they are completely dead wrong. The big predators know exactly what is going on. They follow the baitfish right into the mud. So when you are ignoring a stained patch of water, you are actually ignoring the busiest dining room in the entire lake. The entire food chain is stacked up in that one ugly spot. Instead of casting into empty, clear water hoping a fish happens to swim by, you need to go where the groceries are. If you find the bait, you will absolutely find the monsters waiting just out of sight, ready to ambush anything that twitches. Here is a massive factor that so many fishermen completely overlook. Let us talk about water temperature. In the early spring or late fall, a difference of just 2 or 3 degrees can be the difference between catching a boatload of fish and catching absolutely nothing. What does this have to do with muddy water? Everything. Dark, murky water absorbs the heat from the sun significantly faster than clear water. Think about wearing a solid black shirt on a sunny summer day versus a white shirt. The black shirt gets incredibly hot. The same exact physics apply to the lake. That shallow, muddy cove will warm up much faster than the deep, clear main lake. Those big predators are cold-blooded creatures. When the water is chilly, they are incredibly lethargic. But when they slide into that slightly warmer, murky water, their metabolism kicks into high gear. They become active, they become aggressive, and they start looking for a heavy meal. So while everyone else is freezing their hands off in the main lake, waiting for a bite that is never going to come, you could be picking apart a warm, muddy, shallow flat and catching the most active fish in the entire system. Always pay attention to the temperature gauge when you find the dirt. Let us break down the ambush factor, because this is where the extreme aggression really comes from. In clear water, a predator might follow your lure for 20 yards. They will swim right behind it, looking at it from every angle, deciding if it is real or fake. This gives them way too much time to spot a hook or notice your fishing line. But in murky water, the strike zone shrinks dramatically. A fish might only be able to see a few inches in front of its face. Because their vision is limited, they cannot afford to hesitate. When a lure suddenly comes into their tiny field of view, or when they feel the vibration right next to their head, they have to make a split-second decision. They do not have time to inspect it. They do not have time to think. They just react and crush it. This is why bites in dirty water often feel like your rod is being ripped straight out of your hands. The fish are committing entirely to the kill because they are afraid the meal is going to disappear back into the gloom. You are triggering a pure primal reflex. If you want to experience the most violent, heart-stopping strikes in fishing, you have to put your bait in the dark water, where hesitation means going hungry. Fishing has changed a lot in the last 10 years. You go to any boat ramp today, and you will see guys with boats that cost more than a nice house. They have 5 different screens on the dashboard. They have forward-facing sonar. They are staring at screens, trying to pinpoint individual fish suspended in 40 feet of perfectly clear water. It is like playing a video game. And yes, they catch fish. But there is always that one older guy. He is fishing out of an aluminum boat from 1999. He has no screens. He just has a heavy rod and a box of jigs. He drives straight past the deep water, goes right into the thickest, muddiest reeds he can find, and starts flipping. At the end of the day, that older guy often weighs in a massive bag of fish that makes the guys with the expensive electronics scratch their heads. Why? Because the older guy knows that fishing the mud is about pure instinct, not fancy technology. He knows that the biggest, meanest fish in the lake do not want to suspend in open water where everyone can see them on a screen. They want to bury themselves in the dirt and the weeds. Do not let technology make you forget the raw, basic rules of nature. Now, we need to address the biggest mistake fishermen make when they finally decide to try fishing in the murky water. They use the completely wrong lures. People have been brainwashed into thinking that every lure must look exactly like a real minnow or a real crawfish. They tie on a translucent, natural-colored soft plastic or a perfectly painted crankbait. That is great for clear water. But in the mud, natural colors simply disappear. It is like throwing a piece of camouflage into a dense forest. The fish cannot see it. When the water looks like dirty coffee, you need to throw out everything you know about natural colors. You need contrast. You need loud, obnoxious colors that grab attention. Solid black, bright chartreuse, neon orange. A black and blue jig will stand out against a muddy background far better than a natural green pumpkin one. The goal here is not to trick the fish with a photorealistic paint job. The goal is to give them a solid, visible target that they can easily track down and destroy. If your buddy tells you that a neon yellow spinnerbait does not look like a real fish, tell him he is absolutely right, and then watch his face as you catch fish after fish. Visual contrast is only half of the equation in the dirt. The other half, and honestly the most important half, is sound and water displacement. Remember what we said earlier about the lateral line? You need to light that radar system up like a Christmas tree. In clear water, A subtle, silent approach is usually best. In murky water, you want to be the loudest, most annoying thing swimming around. This is the time to tie on a lure that moves a ton of water. A big Colorado blade spinnerbait that thumps so hard you can feel it all the way up to your shoulder. A chatterbait that shakes violently. A crankbait with loud, clacking rattles inside. You want your bait to send out a shockwave that screams, "Here I am! Come and get me!" Imagine walking through a pitch-black room. If someone drops a tiny pin, you might not know where it is. If someone starts playing a drum set, you know exactly which direction to walk. Your lure needs to be that loud drum set. You are giving the predator an incredibly easy tracking beacon. The louder the vibration, the easier it is for an aggressive fish to lock onto the target and deliver a crushing blow. Let us talk about a specific phenomenon that you should always be hunting for: the wind-blown mudline. Wind is one of the most powerful tools a smart fisherman can use. When the wind blows hard against a dirt bank, it churns up the bottom and creates a thick band of muddy water. This mudline slowly pushes out into the clearer water. Most casual fishermen will hide from the wind. They want a calm, peaceful bay where the water is flat and clear. But the smart fisherman points his boat right into the teeth of the wind. That mudline is a natural buffet line. The wind pushes the microscopic food into the mud. The small fish follow, and the big predators stack up right on the edge. They sit in the dirty water, looking out into the slightly clearer water, waiting for bait fish to get disoriented by the crashing waves. Casting a moving bait right across the seam where the muddy water meets the clear water is one of the deadliest tactics in all of fishing. It is aggressive, it is active, and it produces violent strikes. Stop running away from the heavy wind and the mud it creates. Embrace the chaos, because that is exactly what the big fish are doing. Why do so many people avoid the murky water, even if they know fish might be hiding there? Fear. Pure, simple fear of losing their expensive gear. Murky water hides secrets. It hides sunken trees, giant boulders, old shopping carts, and thick vegetation. When you cast into clear water, you can steer your lure right around the danger. When you cast into the mud, you are casting completely blind. You know that at any second your $5 lure might get permanently lodged in a sunken log. So, people avoid it. They stay in the safe, clear, open water where they will not lose any tackle. But guess what? Safe water means safe fish, and safe fish do not get big. The monsters live in the nasty stuff. They want to be tucked underneath that sunken tree that you cannot see. If you want to catch the most aggressive predators, you have to accept that you are going to lose some gear. It is the cost of doing business. Tie on heavier line. Use weedless presentations. Throw heavy jigs or Texas-rigged plastics that can bump safely through the heavy cover. Stop being afraid of the snags. If you are not getting hung up every once in a while, you are simply not fishing in the right spots. Changing your approach requires a complete rewiring of your fishing mindset. For years, you have been conditioned to see muddy water as ruined water. You pull up to a lake after a heavy rainstorm, see the brown water, and immediately complain that the fishing is going to be terrible. You need to flip that negative thought perfectly upside down. You need to start seeing dirty water as a massive opportunity. When the water gets murky, the fish do not just pack up and leave the lake. They do not vanish into thin air. They just change their behavior. They move shallower. They tuck tighter to cover. They rely more on ambush tactics. This actually makes them way more predictable. In a giant, clear lake, fish can be absolutely anywhere. They can roam freely because they feel perfectly safe. But in dirty water, they lock onto specific pieces of cover like magnets. Every single stump, every rock pile, every dock piling becomes a guaranteed holding spot. Instead of groaning when you see the mud, you should be smiling. The murky water has just eliminated 90% of the empty water for you. The fish have given you their exact address. You just have to be willing to knock on the door. Let us focus on the absolute sweet spot, the transition zone. This is the holy grail of fishing. You rarely want to be in the absolute thickest, soupiest mud where you cannot even see half an inch, and you already know we are avoiding the gin-clear water. You want that magical area where the watercolor starts to change, the transition from heavy mud to slightly stained water. This edge acts exactly like a solid wall. Predators use this wall of murky water, just like a hunter uses a duck blind. They will sit right inside the edge of the dirty water, completely concealed, and look out into the clearer water. Any baitfish that swims near that edge is making a fatal mistake. It is like walking blindly past a dark alley. If you can find this transition line, you do not need to aimlessly cast all over the lake. You just position yourself parallel to that color change and run your bait right down the edge. I have seen days where every single cast onto that mudline resulted in a heavy fish, while boats 20 yards away in the clear water caught absolutely nothing. Learn to read the watercolor. Do not just look at it as all dirty or all clear. Find the edge. Weather changes everything, and knowing how to exploit rain runoff will make you a local legend. When a heavy summer thunderstorm hits, most guys pack up and go to the local diner. They think the lake is blown out. But if you know what to look for, the next few hours are pure magic. Go to the back of any creek, or find where a drainage pipe or a ditch empties into the main lake. The fresh rain will be washing warm, muddy water directly into the system. This creates a highly oxygenated, muddy plume pushing into the lake. It is carrying thousands of washed-out insects and worms. The baitfish will swarm this muddy plume almost instantly, and directly beneath them, the biggest, meanest predators in the lake will be waiting. Pitching a dark-colored jig or rolling a spinnerbait right through the center of that muddy runoff is a guaranteed way to get your arm broken by a massive fish. This bite might only last for a day or two before the mud finally settles, but while it is happening, it is the most aggressive feeding frenzy you will ever witness. While the other guys are sitting at home waiting for the water to clear up, you are out there catching their personal bests. Think about the element of surprise. In clear water, fishing is a tough game of finesse and stealth. You have to make super long casts. You have to use light line that practically breaks if you look at it wrong. You have to wear dull clothes, so the fish do not see you standing up in the boat. It is exhausting. Murky water gives you the ultimate cover. The fish cannot see you coming. You can get away with using heavy braid or thick fluorocarbon line. You can drive your boat much closer to the cover without spooking the fish. You can literally drop a heavy lure right on top of their heads. The dirty water masks all of your mistakes. It is incredibly forgiving. If you make a sloppy cast and the lure splashes down hard, a bass in clear water will run for its life. But a bass in muddy water will turn toward the splash, thinking a frog just jumped off the bank, and instantly attack it. The murky water allows you to use heavy, aggressive tactics that put the odds squarely in your favor. You do not have to trick them with a perfect, delicate presentation. You just have to crash the party and start a fight. There is a trick to fishing this heavy cover in dirty water, and it requires a completely different kind of patience. When you are fishing a clear flat, you cast, reel it in, and cast to a different spot. You are trying to cover water rapidly. In murky water, the strike zone is incredibly small. A fish might be sitting right next to a stump, and if your lure passes by 2 feet to the left, the fish will never even know it was there. This means you have to make multiple casts to the exact same piece of cover. You might pitch your jig to the left side of a stump. Nothing happens. You pitch it to the right side. Nothing. You pitch it right into the middle of the roots, bump it hard against the wood, and suddenly the rod loads up. The fish was there the whole time, but you had to put the bait directly on its nose. Many fishermen completely lack this discipline. They cast once, assume nobody is home, and move on. You have to dissect the cover, bump the wood, grind the rocks, annoy the fish until it has absolutely no choice but to bite. It might take 5 casts to the exact same bush, but that 5th cast will often trigger the most violent strike of the day. Let us add one more deadly weapon to your dirty water arsenal: scent. In crystal clear water, scent is a nice bonus, but the fish are primarily using their eyes to hunt. In the murky water, their other senses completely take over. They are feeling the vibration, but they are also heavily using their sense of smell. Adding a strong scent to your soft plastics or jigs gives them one more critical reason to commit to the strike. Garlic, crawfish oil, or baitfish spray can make a massive difference. When a predator feels the thump of your lure in the dark water, they turn toward it. But if they also smell a highly concentrated burst of prey, it turns a hesitant reaction into a full-blown feeding instinct. Furthermore, scent makes them hold onto the bait just a split second longer. When they crush your jig in the mud, they cannot see that it is actually made of silicone and lead. They taste the garlic or the heavy salt. They think it is real meat, and they keep their mouth clamped shut. That extra half second is all the time you need to set the hook and bury it deep. Never go into the dirty water without juicing up your baits. The hardest part of all this is simply breaking your own stubborn habits. As fishermen, we are incredibly stubborn creatures. We like to do things exactly the way our fathers taught us. We like the comfort of our favorite clear water coves. We like throwing the same shiny lures we bought 10 years ago. But the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a totally different result. If you have been casting your arm off for 3 hours in the pristine, beautiful water without a single bite, you have to force yourself to make a change. Pick up the trolling motor, put away the finesse gear, drive the boat to the ugliest, muddiest, messiest section of the lake, the area with the floating logs and the thick weeds, the place where you are genuinely afraid to lose a lure. It takes real courage to leave water that looks beautiful for water that looks absolutely terrible. But the moment you feel that heavy thump on the end of your heavy rod, all of that hesitation will vanish. You will suddenly realize that beauty is truly in the eye of the beholder, and to a hungry, aggressive predator, muddy water is the most beautiful thing in the world. Let us talk about the ultimate payoff. There is absolutely nothing in the entire world of fishing that compares to a dirty water strike. Imagine you are working a heavy, noisy topwater bait over a muddy, shallow flat. You cannot see the bottom. The water looks like thick soup. You are just rhythmically working the rod, listening to the lure churn the water. Suddenly, the water bulges heavily behind your bait. A wake appears, moving fast like a submarine. The predator has tracked the vibrations straight through the mud. It does not pause to inspect the paint job. It does not care if the hooks are visible. The water simply detonates. A massive fish explodes through the surface, violently thrashing its head, inhaling your lure with pure, unadulterated aggression. Your heavy rod bends in half, the thick line tightens, and the battle is on. You realize right then and there that you have been missing out on this your entire life. You have been wasting your time trying to trick spooky fish in swimming pools, when you could have been brawling with monsters in the mud. Once you experience that kind of raw power, you will never look at murky water the same way again. You will officially become a mud hunter. We have broken down exactly why you need to stop ignoring the dirt. The biggest takeaway here is the ambush factor. That sudden realization that fish in murky water simply do not have time to inspect your lure. They just have to react and attack. This completely flips the old logic upside down. Beautiful, clear water often equals hesitant, spooky fish, while ugly water equals aggressive, hungry monsters. Changing your mindset, putting away the finesse gear, and targeting the mudline will absolutely transform your success on the water. I want to thank you for hanging out and talking fishing with me today. If you learned something new and are ready to tackle the dirty water, hit that subscribe button right now. Leave a big like on the video so we know you enjoyed the brutal honesty. And head down to the comments section. What is the absolute biggest fish you ever pulled out of the mud? Let us get a massive conversation going, and I will see you on the water.